had been teaching music at Westman Academy for 3 years when my life changed on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon in September. The meeting with Mrs. Anderson about her son's progress in violin lessons had run longer than expected, and by the time I stepped out into the sunlight filtering through Boston Common's old elm trees, most of the afternoon crowds had thinned. I clutched my worn leather messenger bag, mentally planning the evening ahead. Grade assignments, prepare tomorrow's lesson on rhythm theory, maybe finally call my college roommate back. The crying reached me before I saw her. A small figure huddled on one of the green benches near the frog pond, her shoulders shaking with the kind of desperate sobs that made my heart clench. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, wearing a cream-colored dress that looked expensive, tiny patent leather shoes, and clutching a teddy bear that had definitely seen better days. Dark curls fell around her face as she buried it against the bear's worn fur. I glanced around, searching for frantic parents or a nanny, anyone who might be looking for this child. But the paths around us were mostly empty, except for joggers with earbuds and a few tourists consulting maps. Nobody seemed to notice the little girl falling apart on the bench. I've never been good at walking away from children in distress. It's probably why I became a teacher in the first place. "Hey there," I said softly, approaching slowly and crouching to her eye level about 3 feet away. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" The little girl looked up, and I was struck by how large her brown eyes were, swimming with tears and terror. She said something that I didn't catch, her voice thick with crying. "Can you tell me your name?" I tried again, keeping my voice gentle. "I'm Taylor. I'm a teacher." She responded, but the words weren't English. My brain scrambled to place the language, catching the musical rhythm of it. Italian, maybe? My grandmother had spoken it, though I'd been so young when she passed that most of it had faded. "Do you speak English?" I asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course she didn't, or she would have responded. I noticed the teddy bear she held had embroidery on its vest. I leaned slightly closer, trying to make out the letters. Orsetto. Definitely Italian. I racked my brain for anything my Nonna had taught me. I'd taken some Italian classes in college, partly to honor her memory, partly because I'd fallen in love with the language. It came back slowly. Rusty, but there. "Come to Chiami?" I asked carefully. "What's your name?" Switching into slow, careful Italian, even though the words felt rusty on my tongue. Her eyes widened slightly, a flash of hope breaking through the fear. "Chiara," she whispered. "Chiara," I repeated, offering a small smile. "That's a beautiful name. My name is Taylor." Mi chiamo Taylor." She stared at me, still crying but not quite as hard. I desperately tried to remember more Italian, fragments of Nonna's voice mixing with half-forgotten college courses. "Dove sono I tuoi genitori?" I tried in broken Italian. "Where are your parents?" Then repeated more clearly in English. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, and she shook her head frantically, speaking rapid Italian that I could barely follow. Something about her papa, about being scared, about someone named Marco. I sat down on the bench, careful to maintain some distance so I wouldn't frighten her more. "Think, Taylor, what calmed kids when they were scared? Music. It always came back to music. My grandmother used to sing to me when I had nightmares after my parents died. An old Neapolitan lullaby, simple and sweet. I could still hear her voice sometimes, aged and warm, singing the words I'd memorized phonetically long before I understood what they meant. Almost without thinking, I started humming the melody. Chiara's crying stuttered to a stop. She looked at me with something like wonder, as I began singing softly, the Italian words feeling foreign, but familiar on my tongue. "Fa la nina, fa la nanna, nella braccia della mamma. Fa la nina bel bambin, fa la nanna bambin bel." I didn't remember all the verses, but I repeated the ones I knew, my voice barely above a whisper. Chiara had gone completely still, her teddy bear forgotten in her lap, those huge brown eyes fixed on my face. "Come, how do you know that song?" she asked in heavily accented English, surprising me. "My grandmother taught me," I said gently. "She was from Italy, near Napoli. My mama sang that song," Chiara whispered. She's gone now." My heart broke for this tiny girl. I'm sorry, sweetheart. That must be very hard. Before either of us could say more, I heard shouting. 3 men in dark clothes appeared on the path, running toward us. They looked professional, almost military in their bearing, and my first instinct was to pull Kiara behind me, but she gasped in relief. Marco! Marco! The first man reached us, dropping to one knee and immediately switching to Italian as he checked Kiara over, his hands gentle but thorough as he examined her for injuries. I caught enough to understand he was asking if she was hurt, if anyone had bothered her. Sto bene, Kiara assured him. She's okay. She pointed at me, launching into rapid Italian. The man, Marco apparently, looked at me with sharp assessment. You found her. Thank you, he said in English, though his accent was thick. You speak Italian? A little. Not much. She was crying and I just wanted to help. She ran from us, he said, and there was genuine distress in his voice. One moment she was there, the next gone. Mr. Marino will want to thank you. I was about to say that wasn't necessary when I heard a new voice, deep and commanding, cutting through the afternoon air like a blade. Where is she? I turned and felt something in my chest tighten. The man walking toward us was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. But it wasn't the expensive clothes that made me stare. It was the way he moved, the way the air around him seemed to bend, the way Marco and his colleagues immediately straightened to attention. Dark hair, strong jaw, and eyes that were currently scanning the park with barely controlled panic. Those eyes found Kiara, and something cracked in his expression. Kiara, he breathed, and suddenly he was crossing the remaining distance in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees and pulling her into his arms. Kiara, my darling, don't ever do that again. Don't ever run from Marco like that. His Italian was too fast for me to follow completely, but I understood the tone. Relief, fear, love, all mixing together as he held his daughter and she clung to his neck. Then Kiara was pulling back, talking excitedly, pointing at me. I caught my name, caught the word for song, canzone, and saw the exact moment the man, Mr. Marino, focused on me. He stood slowly, Kiara still in his arms, and I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. They were dark brown, nearly black in the late afternoon sun, and the way he looked at me made me feel exposed. You, he said slowly, his English accented but clear. Sang to my daughter? She was upset, I said, trying not to sound defensive. I was just trying to help. What song? Something about the way he asked made me hesitate. An old lullaby. My grandmother taught me. It's Neapolitan, I think. Sing it, he ordered. It wasn't a request. I opened my mouth to refuse, because who was this man to command me like that? But then I saw Kiara watching me hopefully, and I couldn't say no to her. So I sang. Just one verse, feeling ridiculous standing in Boston Commons singing an Italian lullaby to a strange man in an expensive suit. The color drained from his face. Completely. One moment he was commanding and intimidating. The next he looked like I'd slapped him. How? He said, and his voice had gone rough. How do you know that song? I told you. My grandmother. Where was she from? Exactly where? I blinked at the intensity. A small town outside Naples. Caserta. Why does it matter? He stared at me like I was a ghost. Kiara tugged on his collar, saying something worried, but he didn't look away. That song, he said quietly, was my wife's favorite. She sang it to Kiara every night. She learned it from her grandmother in Caserta. The coincidence was eerie. My grandmother was from there. Grew up there anyway. It's not that small of a region. Probably lots of people know that song. But his expression said he didn't believe in coincidences. Marco said something in Italian, low and urgent, and Mr. Marino nodded once. Your name, he said to me. Taylor Wells. I am Nicholas Marino. This is my daughter, Kiara. He paused, still studying me with that unsettling intensity. I owe you a debt, Miss Wells. You calmed her when no one else could. It was nothing. Really. I'm just glad she's okay. It was not nothing. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a card and handed it to me. It was thick, Expensive paper with just a name and phone number. If you ever need anything, you call that number. I took it because refusing seemed rude. That's not necessary. Nevertheless. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then said something to Marco in Italian that sounded like an order. Marco nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping away slightly. What? I started to ask. But Nicholas Marino had already turned, carrying Chiara toward a black SUV I hadn't noticed before. Chiara waved at me over his shoulder. Grazie, Miss Taylor. I waved back automatically, watching them go. The whole encounter had lasted maybe 10 minutes, but I felt shaken by it in a way I couldn't explain. Marco returned briefly. Mr. Marino wanted to ensure you arrive home safely. May I call you a car? I'm fine. I live nearby. But thank you. He nodded once, professional and polite, then followed his employer. I watched the SUV pull away, turning the heavy card over in my hands. There was something about the way Nicholas Marino had looked at me, like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. I slipped the card into my bag and headed home, trying to shake the feeling that I'd just stumbled into something far more complicated than a lost child in a park. My apartment in Brighton was small and cluttered with sheet music, but it was mine. I made tea, graded half the assignments I'd meant to finish, and kept thinking about dark brown eyes and a little girl who'd stopped crying the moment I sang her mother's song. Just a coincidence, I told myself. Just a strange, sad coincidence. I didn't know then that coincidences like that don't just happen. I didn't know that in 5 days, everything would change. 5 days passed in a blur of lesson plans and student performances before the phone call came. I was in the faculty lounge, microwaving leftover pasta and grading rhythm exercises when my cell rang with an unfamiliar number. Miss Wells? The voice was professional, female, with a crisp accent that suggested expensive education. This is Catherine Reeves from Whitmore & Associates. I'm calling on behalf of a client who wishes to discuss a private tutoring opportunity with you. I almost dropped my phone. I'm sorry. What? A position as a private music instructor. The compensation would be considerable, and the schedule would accommodate your current teaching obligations at Westmont Academy. Would you be available for an interview? Who's the client? Mr. Marino has requested discretion until the interview. I assure you this is a legitimate offer. Would tomorrow at 2 o'clock be suitable? The address is in Beacon Hill. My heart did something complicated. Mr. Marino. Nicholas Marino and his daughter, who'd stopped crying when I sang her mother's song. I hesitated. This was strange, wasn't it? But then I thought of Chiara's huge brown eyes and the way she'd clung to her teddy bear. Yes, tomorrow at 2. Catherine Reeves gave me an address on Mount Vernon Street and ended the call with practiced efficiency. I stared at my cooling pasta, appetite gone. My colleague Rachel appeared in the doorway, arms full of sheet music. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Someone just offered me a private tutoring position. Like, completely out of nowhere. That's great. You've been saying you need extra income. What's the problem? The problem was, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more complicated than a simple tutoring job, but I couldn't explain why, without sounding paranoid. Nothing, I said finally. Just unexpected. The next afternoon, I stood in front of a brownstone that probably cost more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. Beacon Hill was beautiful in that effortless old money way. Brick sidewalks and gas lamps and window boxes overflowing with late summer flowers. The building at the address Catherine had given me was 4 stories of red brick with black shutters and a door that gleamed with fresh paint. I rang the bell, smoothing down my gray cardigan nervously. I'd chosen my most professional outfit, black pants and a white blouse under the cardigan, hoping I looked like someone you'd trust to teach your child. The door opened, and I recognized Marco from the park. He looked even more imposing in the brownstone's elegant hallway, but his expression softened slightly when he saw me. Miss Wells, please, come in. The interior was stunning in an understated way. Hardwood floors, cream walls with carefully chosen artwork, a curving staircase that led to upper floors. Classical music played softly from somewhere deeper in the house. It felt like a home, not a showcase. Mr. Marino is expecting you. This way, please. He led me through a hallway lined with photographs. I caught glimpses of Chiara at various ages, always with dark hair and those huge eyes. And in several frames, a beautiful woman with the same dark hair and warm smile. Chiara's mother. Alessia, Nicholas had called her. Marco opened a door to what appeared to be a study. Rich wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked antique. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the afternoon sun, Nicholas Marino. He turned, and I was struck again by how commanding his presence was. Today he wore a gray suit with the jacket off, sleeves rolled to his elbows. More relaxed than at the park, but no less intimidating. Miss Wells, thank you for coming. Mr. Marino, I managed to keep my voice steady. Your assistant said this was about a tutoring position? Please sit. He gestured to a leather chair facing the desk. I sat, and he moved to lean against the desk rather than sitting behind it. A power move, probably, but I appreciated being able to see his face clearly. I want to hire you to work with Chiara. Music instruction primarily, but also general companionship. Someone who can connect with her. I don't understand. Surely you could find more qualified people. I teach elementary school. I'm not exactly a renowned music instructor. Qualifications aren't the issue. He studied me with those dark eyes. Chiara hasn't spoken to anyone outside our immediate family since her mother died 8 months ago. Not to tutors, not to therapists, not to anyone. Until you. The weight of that statement settled over me. I'm sorry. I can't imagine how hard that must be. She spoke to you, in English. She hasn't done that with a stranger since Alessia passed. His voice caught slightly on his wife's name. And when you sang to her, she calmed immediately. Do you understand how significant that is? The song was her mother's, I said softly. It must have brought back memories. It was more than that. He moved to the window, looking out at the street. Alessia used to sing that exact lullaby every night. She learned it from her grandmother in Caserta, the same town your grandmother was from. It's a small region, but not that small. There must be hundreds of people who know that song. Perhaps. He turned back to me. But only one of them made my daughter speak for the first time in months. I didn't know what to say to that. The silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken things. I'll pay you $5,000 a month, Nicholas said abruptly. 3 sessions per week, after your school hours. You'll work with Chiara on music fundamentals, and more importantly, you'll help her find her voice again. I nearly choked. $5,000? That's 5 times what I make teaching. Is it not acceptable? It's more than acceptable. It's insane. Mr. Marino, I'm not a therapist. I'm just a music teacher. I don't know if I can help Chiara the way you're hoping. You already have helped her, more than anyone else has managed. He crossed back to the desk, pulled a folder from a drawer, and slid it toward me. Contract terms. Read it over. Take your time. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The contract was straightforward, almost painfully so. 3 2-hour sessions per week, payment schedule, confidentiality agreement. That last part made me pause. Confidentiality? My family requires privacy, Miss Wells. I'm sure you understand. I thought about the way Marco and the other security had moved in the park. Military precision and barely concealed weapons. I thought about this house, this neighborhood, the way Nicholas carried himself like someone used to being obeyed without question. What exactly is it you do, Mr. Marino? For work, I mean. I manage various business interests. Import, export, real estate, family enterprises. It was a non-answer, but delivered with such casual confidence that I almost let it go. Almost. And you need your daughter's music teacher to sign a confidentiality agreement because... His expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Because my business dealings sometimes attract unwanted attention, and anyone who enters my home becomes part of our circle, whether they intend to or not. I protect what's mine, Miss Wells, including the people who care for my daughter. It should have sounded threatening. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Can I meet Chiara before I decide? Of course. He moved to the door, spoke briefly to Marco, then returned. She's finishing her lunch. She'll be down shortly. We waited in silence that felt less awkward now. I found myself studying the room more closely. Books in Italian and English. A photograph on the desk of Nicholas and Alessia on their wedding day. Both young and radiant. How long were you married? The question escaped before I could stop it. 7 years. We met in Rome when I was there for business. She was playing violin in a cafe near the Spanish Steps. A small smile touched his mouth. She said Americans had no appreciation for real music. I spent 3 hours proving her wrong. She sounds wonderful. She was. He looked at me directly. Chiara is all I have left of her. And for 8 months I've watched my daughter disappear into silence because I can't fix this. I can't bring her mother back. But maybe I can bring back the music her mother loved. Maybe that's enough. Before I could respond, the door opened and Chiara appeared. She wore a yellow dress today, her dark curls pulled back with a ribbon. And when she saw me, her entire face lit up. "Miss Taylor." She ran across the room, stopped just short of me, suddenly shy. "Hi, Chiara. It's good to see you again. Papa said you might come. Are you going to teach me music? Like Mama?" My heart squeezed. "Would you like me to?" She nodded vigorously, then glanced at her father. "Can she, Papa? Please?" Nicholas looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "That's up to Miss Wells. She hasn't decided yet." Chiara turned those huge brown eyes on me, and I knew I was lost. How could I say no to this child who'd been through so much? "I'd like to, if that's okay with you," I said to Chiara, "but you have to promise to practice between our lessons." I promise everything." She was bouncing slightly on her toes. "Can we start today?" "Chiara." Nicholas's voice was gentle but firm. "Miss Wells needs time to review the contract and think about it. This is a big decision for her. But she already said yes. She said she'd like to." I laughed despite myself. "How about this? I'll look over the contract tonight, and if everything looks good, I'll come back tomorrow and we can have our first lesson. Does that work?" Chiara looked like she wanted to argue, but Nicholas nodded. "That's fair. Thank you, Miss Wells. Please, call me Taylor." "Taylor," he repeated, and somehow my name sounded different when he said it. Marco appeared to escort me out. As I stood to leave, Chiara grabbed my hand. "You'll really come back? Promise?" "I promise, sweetheart." She released me reluctantly, and I followed Marco back through the elegant hallway to the front door. He handed me a card with his number. "If you have questions about the household or schedule, call me. Mr. Marino values punctuality and discretion." "I understand." I walked back down Mount Vernon Street toward the T station, the contract folder tucked under my arm, my mind spinning. $5,000 a month. A little girl who desperately needed help. A man who looked at me like I held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. This was either the best opportunity I'd ever had or the biggest mistake I was about to make. I couldn't tell which. That night, I read the contract 3 times, called my college roommate who worked as a paralegal, and tried to talk myself into seeing red flags. But the contract was straightforward. The money was real. And when I closed my eyes, I saw Chiara's hopeful face. I called Catherine Reeves the next morning and accepted the position. 3 hours later, I was standing in the Marino Brownstone's music room, looking at a beautiful piano and trying not to feel overwhelmed by what I'd just agreed to. 7 weeks into working with Chiara, I arrived for our Tuesday evening session to find the brownstone transformed. Men I didn't recognize stood at strategic points along Mount Vernon Street, and when Marco opened the door, his usual composed expression had tightened into something harder. "Miss Wells," he greeted me, but his attention kept flickering past me to the street. "Please come in quickly." The hallway felt different. More guards, positioned near doorways, speaking in low Italian that cut off when I passed. The classical music that usually played softly through hidden speakers was absent, leaving the house wrapped in tense silence. "Is everything all right?" I asked Marco as he led me toward the music room. "Mr. Marino will speak with you shortly. Please wait here." He left before I could ask more questions. I stood in the middle of the music room, my bag still over my shoulder, wondering if I should leave. Through the closed door, I could hear voices. Nicholas speaking rapidly in Italian, his tone sharp and commanding in a way I'd never heard before. The door opened, and Chiara ran in, followed by a woman I recognized as Maria, the housekeeper. Chiara's face was blotchy from crying. Her usual brightness dimmed. "Miss Taylor!" She launched herself at me, and I caught her automatically, crouching down to her level. "Hey, sweetheart. What's wrong? Papa says we can't have lessons today. He says you have to go home, and I don't want you to go home." I want to practice the song we started yesterday. Kiara. Nicholas's voice came from the doorway, controlled but strained. I told you, Miss Wells, and I need to talk first. But Papa, go with Maria. Now. There was no arguing with that tone. Chiara gave me one last desperate hug, before Maria gently guided her from the room. Nicholas closed the door behind them and turned to face me, and I saw the exhaustion carved into his features. I'm sorry, he said. I should have called to cancel. What's happening? Why are there so many guards outside? He moved to the window, looking out at the street with the same vigilance I'd seen in Marco. There's been a situation with some business associates. A disagreement that's escalated beyond what I anticipated. A disagreement. I set my bag down slowly. Nicholas, I'm not stupid. This is about more than business associates, isn't it? He looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I mean, I've been coming here for almost 2 months. I've watched the way your security operates. I've heard you speaking Italian on the phone in a way that doesn't sound like legitimate business. I've seen the way people defer to you, like you're not just wealthy but powerful in a way that has nothing to do with money. And you've said nothing. It wasn't my business. My job is to teach Kiara music, not to pry into your life. I crossed my arms. But if there's danger, if Kiara is at risk, then it becomes my business. So I'm asking directly, what's really going on? Nicholas studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Finally, he moved away from the window, gesturing to the piano bench. Sit. Please. We need to have a conversation I'd hoped to avoid. I sat, pulse quickening. He remained standing, hands in his pockets, choosing his words carefully. My family has operated in Boston for 3 generations. We handle matters that exist in the spaces between legal and illegal. Protection for businesses, resolution of disputes that can't go through official channels, import and export of goods that require discretion. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You run a criminal organization. The words came out steadier than I felt. We prefer to think of it as providing services the official systems fail to address. But yes, by legal definition, what I do is not entirely lawful. He watched my face carefully. Does this change things for you? I thought about Kiara's progress over the past weeks, how she'd gone from silent to singing simple melodies. I thought about the little girl who'd cried in the park, and the father who'd held her like she was his entire world. That depends, I said slowly. Are you a danger to Kiara? To me? Never to Kiara. She is everything. His voice dropped, and I would cut off my own hand before harming you. But I can't control what others might do to get to me. That's why the security. That's why the confidentiality agreement you signed. The situation today? Rivals. Russians specifically. They've been pushing into territory we've held for years, and negotiations have broken down. There was an incident at one of our properties. No one was hurt, but it was a warning. They're escalating. My stomach tightened. And Kiara is the most valuable thing in my life, which makes her a target if they want to hurt me. Raw pain crossed his face. Her mother was killed by a different rival organization. A car accident that wasn't an accident. I've spent 8 months making sure that never happens again, but today reminded me how vulnerable we still are. The weight of that confession settled over us. Alessia hadn't just died. She'd been murdered. Kiara had lost her mother to violence meant for her father. Why tell me this now? I asked quietly. Because you deserve to understand the risk you're taking by being here, by being associated with me and my daughter. He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I wanted you to have a choice. A real choice, not one based on ignorance. If you walk away now, I'll understand. I'll pay out your contract. You'll never hear from us again. And if I stay, then you accept that being in our lives means being under my protection. It means security will watch you even outside this house. It means you'll sometimes see things or hear things that you'll need to forget. It means your safety becomes my responsibility. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. I protect what's mine, Taylor. He said my name like something precious. But only if you choose this. I won't force you. I stood, needing to be on more equal footing. What about Kiara? What happens to her if I leave? She'll be devastated. But she'll survive. She survived worse. That decided it, really. I thought of that little girl who'd finally started speaking again, who'd smiled yesterday when she'd sung the chorus correctly for the first time. I thought of how she'd run to me today, needing comfort. "I'm not leaving," I said. "Kiara needs me, and I don't abandon people who need me just because things get complicated." Nicholas's expression shifted, relief and something deeper flashing across his features. "You understand this isn't a game? These people, they won't hesitate to use you if they see you as leverage. Then don't let them see me as leverage. You said you protect what's yours, so protect me if it comes to that. But I'm staying." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Maybe both." I managed a small smile, but I made a promise to Kiara, and I keep my promises. Even knowing what I am, what I do, I thought about it, really thought about it. He was a criminal by any legal definition. He probably had blood on his hands, probably made decisions I'd never be comfortable knowing about. But he was also a father who loved his daughter desperately, who'd hired me because I'd made her smile, who looked at me like I was something rare and valuable. I don't know what you are, Nicholas. I don't think I want to know all of it. But I know you love Kiara. I know you've kept me safe since the day we met. And I know that scared little girl upstairs needs music lessons more than I need moral certainty. I held his gaze. So yes, even knowing what I know, I'm staying. He searched my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we have terms to discuss. If you're staying, we do this properly. No more walking alone at night. Marco or another guard will drive you to and from school. You'll have a phone that connects directly to my security team. And you tell me immediately if anyone approaches you, asks about me, shows unusual interest. That's a lot of restrictions. That's the price of staying safe." His expression softened slightly. "I won't cage you, Taylor. But I won't watch another person I care about get hurt because I was careless." Another person I care about. The words hung between us, unexamined, but significant. "Okay," I said finally. "I can accept those terms. But I have conditions too. Kiara comes first. Always. If being around me puts her at greater risk, I walk away, no matter what you say. And you're honest with me about the danger. I can't make good decisions without information." Agreed. We stood there in the music room, classical instruments on the walls, late afternoon sun slanting through the windows, making a deal that felt far more binding than any contract. "Can I see Kiara?" I asked. I don't want her thinking I abandoned her. Relief crossed his face. "She's been asking for you since Maria took her upstairs." He led me up to the second floor, to a room I hadn't seen before. Kiara's bedroom was perfect for a 5-year-old, soft yellows and creams, shelves full of books, a corner devoted to toys she rarely played with. She sat on her bed, tears drying on her cheeks, clutching the teddy bear from the park. "Miss Taylor!" She scrambled off the bed. "You didn't leave." I caught her in a hug. "Of course not. I told you I was staying, remember? But Papa said it might not be safe and you might not want to come anymore. And I was scared you wouldn't come back like... Her voice broke, like her mother. The unspoken words cut through me. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. We're still going to have our lessons. And you're still going to practice. And we're going to keep working on music together. Okay?" She nodded against my shoulder. Nicholas stood in the doorway, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Maybe not tonight's lesson, though," I said gently to Kiara. "It's been a hard day, but tomorrow we'll have a longer session to make up for it. Promise?" I promise. When I finally left that evening, Marco drove me home in the black SUV I'd only seen from a distance. The ride was quiet. But before I got out, he turned to look at me. "Mr. Marino doesn't care about many people, Miss Wells. But he cares about you and Kiara. That makes you family. And we protect family. Thank you, Marco." "No, thank you. For not running. Most people would have." As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I thought about how my life had shifted without me quite noticing. 7 weeks ago, I was just a music teacher. Now I was tangled up with a mob boss and his daughter, accepting security details and learning to live with danger. Rachel would think I was insane. Hell, I thought I was insane. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Kiara's hopeful face and Nicholas's quiet desperation, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Complicated, dangerous, probably foolish, but right. November arrived with the kind of cold that made Boston feel smaller, everyone hunched into coats and hurrying between buildings. I'd been working with Kiara for nearly 3 months when she brought up the winter recital during one of our Tuesday sessions. Miss Taylor, my friend Sophie, she goes to music school and they have a big show at Christmas where everyone plays instruments and parents come and there's cookies after. She was carefully pressing piano keys, practicing scales, but her attention was clearly elsewhere. Do you think I could do something like that? My hands stilled over the sheet music I'd been organizing. You want to perform? In front of people? Just a little bit. Just one song, maybe. She looked up at me with those enormous brown eyes. Mama used to play violin at shows. Papa has videos. She looked so happy. The comparison to Alessia twisted something in my chest. That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart. But we'd have to ask your father. He'll say no. The resignation in her voice was heartbreaking. He always says no about going places. She wasn't wrong. Nicholas had turned down every invitation that involved Kiara leaving the brownstone, or its immediately secured perimeter. Birthday parties, school visits, even the music store when we needed new sheet music. Marco went instead, following my detailed list. But I thought about Kiara's progress, how far she'd come from the silent child in the park. She deserved to share her music with the world. Let me talk to him, I said. No promises, but I'll try. That evening, Nicholas arrived home while I was packing up my materials. He looked tired, jacket off and tie loosened, but he smiled when he saw Kiara showing me her drawing of a piano. How was the lesson? Good. She's ready to move to more complex pieces. I hesitated. Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone? His expression shifted to concern. But he nodded. Kiara, go help Maria with dinner preparations, please. Once she'd skipped out, he turned to me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to discuss something Kiara brought up today. I explained about the recital, watching his face close down before I'd even finished. Nicholas, before you say no, the answer is no. You know why. I do. But I also know Kiara needs this. She needs to experience performing, to feel what her mother felt. Music isn't just about playing in empty rooms. It's about sharing it. You want me to put my daughter in a room full of strangers where anyone could be a threat. His voice was hard. After everything I told you, you're asking me to make her a target. I'm asking you to let her be a child, just for one afternoon. The price of that afternoon could be her life. We stared at each other across the music room, tension thick between us. Finally, I tried a different approach. What if we made it completely secure? Your venue, your security, your rules. Not a public recital at some random school. Something private, controlled. Taylor, just hear me out. What if we did a small performance here, in the brownstone? Invite a handful of people, all thoroughly vetted. Set it up exactly how you need it to be safe, but let Kiara have the experience of playing for an audience. Let her share what she's learned. He was quiet for a long moment, fingers drumming against his thigh. I could see him calculating risks, weighing possibilities. Who would attend? Family, maybe? People you trust. I could invite my colleague Rachel. She's been asking to meet Kiara. Keep it intimate, no more than 20 people. 20 is too many. 15, 10, however many you're comfortable with. I moved closer. Nicholas, she's 5 years old and she spent 8 months locked away from the world because you're terrified of losing her the way you lost Alicia. I understand that fear, but you can't keep her in a bubble forever. I can try. But there was less conviction in his voice now. Please, let me give her this. He looked at me, really looked at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. You care about her, genuinely. Of course I do. She's an incredible kid. And you're not afraid of what being involved with us means? I'm terrified. But I'm staying anyway. I held his gaze. So let me do my job. Let me help Kiara grow, even if it scares you. Finally, he nodded slowly. Small gathering. Here. Guest list approved by me personally. Marco and his team positioned throughout. And if I sense anything wrong, anything at all, it ends immediately. Deal. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're the one who has to plan it. A hint of humor crept into his voice. And deal with Kiara's excitement when she finds out. When I told Kiara the next day, she quite literally jumped up and down, her usual composure forgotten in pure childhood joy. Really? Really, really? Papa said yes? He said yes. But it's going to be small. Just close family and a couple of my friends. And you have to practice extra hard to be ready. I'll practice every day. Twice a day. Miss Taylor, thank you. Thank you, thank you. She threw her arms around me and I hugged her back, looking over her head to see Nicholas watching from the doorway. The next few weeks blurred into intensive preparation. Kiara practiced with a dedication I'd never seen in a child her age. We chose a simple piece, an Italian folk song I'd taught her that would showcase her voice more than complex piano skills. Nicholas threw himself into planning with the same intensity he probably brought to his business dealings. Every guest was vetted thoroughly. Marco and I had 3 separate meetings about security positioning. The Brownstones' music room was transformed into a miniature concert hall, chairs arranged in careful rows, lighting adjusted for optimal acoustics. The day of the recital, I arrived 3 hours early to find the house already humming with activity. Staff I'd never seen before moved through rooms, Maria directed food preparation, and Marco coordinated his team through an earpiece. I found Kiara in her bedroom, wearing a deep red velvet dress that Maria had helped her pick out. She was vibrating with nervous energy. What if I forget the words? What if I play the wrong notes? What if... Hey, I knelt in front of her, taking her small hands. Do you remember what I told you about performing? That the music lives in my heart, not just my fingers. Exactly. And if you make a mistake, you just keep going. The audience won't know it was wrong unless you stop. But what if Papa is disappointed? I smiled. Your father could never be disappointed in you. You know what he told me? That watching you perform is going to be the proudest moment of his life since you were born. Her eyes went wide. He said that? He did. It was true. Nicholas had confessed it to me last night. His voice rough with emotion we'd both pretended not to notice. The guests began arriving at 2:00. I recognized Nicholas's sister, Lucia, who pulled me into a hug that surprised me. So you're the miracle worker I've heard about. Taylor, yes? I'm so glad to finally meet you. Likewise. Nicholas has mentioned you. She laughed. I'm sure he has. Probably complaining about my interference. Her expression turned serious. Thank you for what you've done for Kiara and for my brother. Before I could ask what she meant, Rachel appeared, eyes wide as she took in the elegant brownstone. Taylor Mitchell Wells, you have been holding out on me. This house is insane. It's not mine, I said quickly. This is my student's home. Your student's father is clearly doing well for himself. She lowered her voice. Is he single? Please tell me there's a tragic but romantic backstory. Rachel, I'm just saying, if you're not interested, can we not do this right now? But Nicholas chose that moment to appear, greeting guests with the easy authority of a man used to command. He looked devastating in a tailored navy suit, and I saw Rachel's eyes go wide. That's him? That's the father? She hissed in my ear. Taylor. Girl, why did you not mention he looks like that? Because it's not relevant to teaching his daughter music. It's relevant to my social life. Introduce me. I reluctantly made introductions. Nicholas was polite but distant with Rachel, his attention constantly flicking to the doorway where Kiara would enter, to Marco's position by the windows, to every detail that might pose a threat. By the time everyone was seated, about 12 people filled the small space. Nicholas sat in the front row, Lucia beside him. I stood near the piano, ready to accompany Kiara if she needed support. Maria dimmed the lights slightly. The room fell silent, and then Kiara appeared in the doorway, tiny in her red dress, but standing straight and brave. I saw Nicholas's throat work as he swallowed hard. His daughter, performing publicly for the first time since her mother died. The weight of that moment hung over all of us. Kiara walked to the piano, sat on the bench we'd adjusted for her height, and looked directly at her father. She didn't speak, just placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The Italian folk song filled the room, simple but beautiful. Her voice, when she started singing, was clear and sweet, carrying the lyrics about home and family and love that endures. I'd chosen it deliberately, knowing it was something Alessia might have sung. I watched Nicholas's face throughout the performance. He sat utterly still, barely breathing, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes that he didn't bother to hide. This was his daughter, alive and whole and making music her mother had loved. This was hope and healing wrapped in a 5-year-old's voice. When Chiara finished, the room erupted in applause. She stood and curtsied exactly as I'd taught her, then ran straight to her father. Nicholas caught her, lifting her into his arms and holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "You were perfect," he whispered against her hair, voice thick with emotion. "Perfect, tesoro mio." Over Chiara's head, his eyes found mine. The gratitude and something deeper in that look made my chest tight. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of compliments for Chiara, desserts that Maria had prepared, and conversation that felt surprisingly normal for a gathering in a mob boss's home. Rachel cornered me at one point. "Okay, so I did some very light stalking of your employer, Rachel, and he's either very good at maintaining privacy or very good at keeping secrets. There's almost nothing about him online except some business registrations and property records. That's weird, right? Or he just values privacy. In this digital age, nobody has that little footprint unless they're working at it." She studied me. "You like him. He's Chiara's father, and my employer. That's not what I asked. You like him. I saw the way you two looked at each other during Chiara's performance. I opened my mouth to deny it, then stopped. Because she was right, wasn't she? Sometime between the park and today, between watching him love his daughter and listening to him share his fears, I'd developed feelings that went far beyond professional respect. It's complicated," I said finally. "The best things usually are." Rachel squeezed my hand. "Just be careful, okay? I don't know what his deal is, but I can tell he's got layers. Deep ones." After the guests left and Chiara was in bed, exhausted but happy, Nicholas found me cleaning up the music room. "Leave it. Maria will handle it tomorrow." "I don't mind." I gathered sheet music into neat stacks. Today went well. Chiara was incredible. Because you prepared her. Because you believed in her when I was too afraid to risk it. He moved closer. "I owe you an apology. And thanks that I don't have words for. You don't owe me anything. Seeing Chiara happy is payment enough." "Is it?" He was very close now. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Because I think you deserve more than just watching from the sidelines." My pulse quickened. "Nicholas, do you know what my sister said to me today? She said you're the first person since Alessia who's made this house feel like a home again. That when you're here, Chiara glows, and I actually smile. I'm just her music teacher. You're so much more than that." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "And if you can't see that, then I've been too careful in hiding how much you've come to mean to us. To me, I should have stepped back. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Should have done anything except lean into his touch and whisper, 'What are you saying?' I'm saying I care about you, Taylor. More than I should. More than is wise. And if that makes you uncomfortable, tell me now, and I'll never mention it again." Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. His response was immediate, arms wrapping around me and pulling me close as the kiss deepened into something that felt inevitable and terrifying and absolutely right. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is a terrible idea," I whispered. "The worst," he agreed. "I'm still Chiara's teacher, your employee. We'll figure it out." And somehow, standing in that music room where his daughter had just performed, where we'd spent months building something neither of us had planned, I believed we would. January brought Boston's coldest weather, the kind that made the brownstones' warmth feel like sanctuary. I'd been working with Chiara for 5 months now, but the dynamic had shifted into something far more complex than teacher and student. Nicholas and I hadn't defined what we were to each other exactly. We existed in a strange limbo, where I was still technically Kiara's tutor, still arrived 3 times a week for scheduled lessons, but now I also stayed for dinner almost every night. Now his hand found mine under the table while Kiara chattered about her day. Now he kissed me goodnight in the hallway before Marco drove me home. It was complicated and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "You're staying for dinner again, right, Miss Taylor?" Kiara asked as we finished Thursday's lesson. She'd progressed to more challenging pieces, her confidence growing with each session. "If your father doesn't mind, he never minds." She said it with the casual certainty of a child who'd noticed the way adults looked at each other. "You make him smile more. Like when Mama was alive." The comparison should have felt like pressure. But coming from Kiara, it was simply an observation, stated without malice or expectation. "Your Mama must have been very special." She was. "But you're special too, just different." Kiara tilted her head, studying me. "Papa says different isn't bad. It's just new. And new can be good. Out of the mouths of 5-year-olds. I hugged her gently. "You're pretty wise. You know that? Papa says I get it from Grandma. She was his mama, and she was very smart." That evening, Nicholas suggested increasing my sessions to 5 days a week. We were in his study after Kiara had gone to bed. The door closed, sitting closer together on the leather sofa than we ever did when she was awake. 5 days? Nicholas, I still have my teaching position at Westmont. I know. But you've mentioned wanting to reduce your hours there. And Kiara has made such incredible progress. I thought, maybe more time together would be beneficial. For her. Just for her? I asked, unable to help the smile. His own mouth curved. Perhaps I have selfish motivations as well. Such as? Instead of answering, he pulled me closer, kissing me with the kind of focus that made my thoughts scatter. We'd been careful about physical affection, both aware of the complicated situation. He was still technically my employer. I was still his daughter's teacher, and neither of us wanted to rush into something that might implode spectacularly. But moments like this made careful restraint feel impossible. When we finally broke apart, he kept his arms around me. "I want you here more, not just for lessons, but for mornings and afternoons and evenings. I want Kiara to have you in her life consistently. I want you in my life consistently. That's a lot of want. I'm aware. Tell me if it's too much." I thought about my cramped apartment in Brighton, about rushing between jobs, about the loneliness I'd grown so accustomed to I'd stopped noticing it. Then I thought about this house, about Kiara's laughter, about Nicholas looking at me like I was something precious. What would that look like practically? I asked. You'd work with Kiara 5 afternoons a week. Mornings you could still teach at Westmont if you want, or use the time for yourself. Dinner here most nights. We'd be together. Officially. People will talk. Your associates. The families you work with. Having your daughter's teacher as your girlfriend isn't exactly conventional. I don't care what people think. He traced patterns on my shoulder. But I care what you think. What you're comfortable with. What I was comfortable with had expanded dramatically in the past months. 6 months ago, I would never have imagined dating someone whose business dealings existed in legal gray zones. Now I found myself more concerned with whether I could make this relationship work than with the ethics of how Nicholas made his money. I want to try, I said finally. The increased schedule, the official relationship, all of it. But we tell Kiara carefully. I don't want her thinking I'm trying to replace her mother. You could never replace Alessia, but you're carving out your own place in our lives, and that's exactly what I want Kiara to understand. We told her the following week, sitting together in the music room where so much of our connection had developed. Kiara, we need to talk to you about something, Nicholas started, and I saw her eyes go wide with the kind of panic kids get when adults announce family meetings. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart, nothing like that. I took her hand. We just wanted you to know that your papa and I, we care about each other, as more than just teacher and father, and we wanted to make sure you're okay with that. She looked between us, processing, like how you care about me. Similar but different, Nicholas said, the way I cared about your mama. That kind of caring. Oh, she was quiet for a moment. So Miss Taylor would be around more? Like, maybe for breakfast and not just lessons? Would that be okay with you? I asked. To my surprise, she launched herself at me, hugging tight. Yes. I already pretend sometimes that you're my extra person, like how Sophie at music class has a mama and a stepmom. Not that you'd be my stepmom because Papa hasn't married you, but maybe like a special friend who's here lots. I looked at Nicholas over her head, saw him watching us with such tenderness it made my chest tight. A special friend who's here lots sounds perfect, I managed. The transition was smoother than I'd expected. I reduced my hours at Westmont to mornings only, which my principal accepted with surprising grace. Rachel had theories about why I was suddenly so invested in private tutoring, but I deflected with practiced ease. My new schedule meant arriving at the brownstone by noon, working with Kiara from 2 to 4, then staying through dinner and evening. Some nights I stayed later, sitting with Nicholas in his study while he handled business calls in Italian, content to grade papers or read while he worked. It was domestic in a way I'd never experienced. Comfortable. Right. The first crack in our carefully constructed world came on a Tuesday in late February. I was helping Kiara practice scales when Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. Mr. Marino needs to see you. Both of you. Now. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I took Kiara's hand and we followed him to Nicholas's study, where I found him standing by the window, phone in hand, jaw tight with barely contained anger. What's wrong? I asked. He looked at Kiara, then at me, clearly weighing how much to say. There's been a development. The Russians we dealt with before, they've made contact again. They know about you, Taylor. About your involvement with us. Ice flooded my veins. How? Someone talked. One of the guests from Kiara's recital, probably. Word spreads in our circles. He moved closer. They're using you as leverage, suggesting that if I don't agree to their territorial demands, you might become a target. Oh, God. You're safe, he said immediately, hands gripping my shoulders. I have security on you always. They won't get near you. But I need you to understand the situation has escalated. Kiara tugged on my hand. What does that mean? Is Miss Taylor in trouble? No, Tesoro. Nicholas knelt to her level. Miss Taylor is perfectly safe. Papa just needs to make sure some bad people stay away from our family. You remember what we talked about? About how sometimes Papa has to handle difficult situations? She nodded solemnly. And you always keep us safe. Always. He looked up at me. Can we talk? Privately? After Maria took Kiara to the kitchen for a snack, Nicholas pulled me into his arms. I should have anticipated this. Should have kept you more separate, more protected. You can't predict everything. I can try. His voice was rough. Taylor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. My heart pounded. Okay. Would you consider staying here, in the brownstone? Not just for visits, but actually living here. It would be safer, easier to protect you. I have guest suites, you'd have your own space, but you'd be within secured perimeters. It was a massive ask. Moving in together after only months of dating, and not even for romantic reasons, but for security concerns. That's a big step. I know. And if you say no, I'll respect it. But I'd sleep better knowing you were here, knowing my security could watch you properly. His eyes searched mine. This isn't about control or possession. It's about not losing someone else I care about. The vulnerability in that confession decided me. Let me think about it. Not because I don't want to, but because I need to process what it means. For my job, my independence, my life. Of course. Take all the time you need. That night, Marco drove me home, and I found myself really looking at my apartment for the first time in weeks. It was small and shabby, filled with secondhand furniture and evidence of a life lived on a budget. I'd been happy here once, but now it just felt lonely. I called Rachel. I need advice, and I need you not to judge me. This should be good. Hit me. I explained everything. The relationship with Nicholas, the security concerns, his request that I move into the brownstone. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Okay. So, setting aside the fact that your boyfriend is apparently connected to organized crime, which we'll definitely circle back to. Let's focus on the practical. Do you love him? Did I? I thought about Nicholas's rare smiles, the way he was with Kiara, how safe I felt in his presence despite knowing he was dangerous. I think I might. And Kiara? How do you feel about potentially becoming a more permanent part of her life? I love her. Completely. She's an amazing kid. Then honestly, maybe you should do it. Life's short, Taylor. And if you found people who make you happy, who cares if the situation is unconventional? She paused. But I swear to God, if this goes bad and you need an escape plan, you call me immediately. Deal. 3 days later, I told Nicholas I'd move in. His relief was palpable. You're sure? I'm terrified and probably making a terrible decision, but yes, I'm sure. He kissed me, soft and grateful. I'll make sure you never regret this. The move itself was simple, because I had so little worth bringing. My books, clothes, a few sentimental items from my grandmother. Everything fit into boxes that Marco and another guard transported in a single afternoon. Nicholas gave me a suite on the second floor, across from Kiara's room. It had a bedroom, sitting area, and private bathroom, decorated in soft creams and blues. My own sanctuary within his fortress. If you want to change anything, redecorate, anything at all, just tell Maria, he said as I unpacked. I want you to feel at home here. It's perfect. And it was. More space than my entire apartment, furnished with care, positioned close to Kiara but offering privacy. That first night, after Kiara was asleep, Nicholas knocked softly on my door. Can I come in? I opened it to find him holding 2 glasses of wine. We sat on the small sofa, close together, and he raised his glass. To new beginnings. To figuring this out as we go, I countered. We clinked glasses and drank, and when he kissed me goodnight at my door, it felt different, more permanent, like we were building something that might actually last. The next morning, Kiara found me making coffee in the kitchen and squealed with delight. You're here for breakfast. This is the best day ever. And watching her joy, feeling Nicholas's arm wrap around my waist from behind, I thought maybe Rachel was right. Maybe unconventional didn't mean wrong. Maybe this strange, complicated family we were building was exactly what all 3 of us needed. March brought the kind of weather that couldn't decide between winter and spring. Boston caught in limbo between seasons. I'd been living at the brownstone for 6 weeks, and while the arrangement worked better than I'd dared hope, the threat that had prompted my move remained unresolved. The Russians hadn't made any direct moves, but Nicholas's tension was palpable. He spent longer hours in his study, conversations in rapid Italian bleeding through closed doors. Marco and the security team maintained constant vigilance, their presence a reminder that our carefully constructed peace was fragile. I was working with Kiara on a new piece when Marco appeared in the doorway, expression more urgent than usual. Miss Wells, Mr. Marino needs to see you immediately. Maria will stay with Kiara. The seriousness in his tone made my stomach clench. Is he okay? He's fine. But it's important. I found Nicholas in his study, phone in one hand, other hand raking through his hair in visible frustration. When he saw me, he ended the call abruptly. Close the door. I did, pulse racing. What happened? The situation with the Yamaguchi family has escalated. They've made it clear they're not backing down from their territorial demands, and they've started moving on businesses under my protection. He moved to the window, jaw tight. There's going to be a confrontation, soon, and I need to ensure you and Kiara are completely secure when it happens. How bad is it? Bad enough that I'm considering options I'd hoped to avoid. He turned to face me. I need you to stay here, in the brownstone, until this is resolved. No going to Westmont, no leaving for any reason. Full lockdown. The request shouldn't have surprised me, but hearing it stated so bluntly made the danger feel immediate. For how long? I don't know. Days? Maybe a week. However long it takes to reach an understanding with them. Nicholas, I can't just disappear from my job without explanation. I've already spoken to your principal. Told him you have a family emergency and need temporary leave. It's handled. His expression was apologetic but firm. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know it's controlling and unfair and a dozen other things. But I can't risk you or Kiara. Not when things are this volatile. I wanted to argue, to assert my independence. But the fear in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't about control. It was about a man terrified of losing the people he loved. Okay, I said quietly. I'll stay. But you have to promise me something. Anything. You keep yourself safe too. Kiara needs her father. And I need you to come back to us. He crossed to me in 3 strides, pulling me against him. I promise. This is business, not war. We'll negotiate, find common ground. I've done this before. Have you? Successfully? Most of the time. The honesty in his admission was somehow reassuring. He wasn't pretending there was no risk, just being realistic about the odds. That night, after Kiara was asleep, Nicholas came to my suite. We'd maintained separate bedrooms, partly for Kiara's sake, partly because neither of us wanted to rush the physical aspects of our relationship. But tonight felt different. Can I stay? He asked from the doorway. Just to sleep. I need to know you're close. I pulled back the covers in answer. He climbed in fully clothed, and I curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. Tell me about Alessia, I said quietly. How did you meet? He was silent for a moment, then started speaking, voice low in the darkness. I was in Rome for business, handling some contracts my father had set up before he died. She was playing violin in a small cafe near the Spanish Steps, and the moment I heard her, I couldn't leave. I sat there for 3 hours, ordering coffee after coffee, just listening. His hand traced patterns on my shoulder. She noticed, eventually, came to my table during her break and told me I was making her nervous with all the staring. I smiled against his chest. What did you say? That I was sorry, but her music had made me forget how to be polite. She laughed and sat down, and we talked until the cafe closed. I extended my trip by a week, just to see her every day. She knew what you were, what your family did. Eventually, she didn't care, or she cared but loved me anyway. Said everyone has darkness. Mine just wore a better suit. His voice roughened. She made me want to be better. Not leave the business. She understood it was part of me, but be better at balancing it. More careful, more strategic, less reckless. Yeah, she sounds amazing. She was. And when she died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part where I could be happy, have a home instead of just a house. He tilted my chin up to look at me. Then you walked into our lives singing her favorite song, and Kiara smiled for the first time in months. And I started thinking maybe there was room for happiness again. Different happiness, but real. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. You couldn't if you tried. But you're carving out your own space in our lives, Taylor. Your own importance. And I'm grateful for it every day. We kissed, slow and sweet, and eventually drifted to sleep tangled together. When I woke in the pre-dawn darkness, he was already gone. But a note on the bedside table read, "Meetings all day. Stay safe. I love you." The words made my breath catch. We hadn't said them before, both cautious about moving too fast. But there they were, written in his neat handwriting, impossible to take back. I love you too, I thought, pressing the note to my chest. The lockdown lasted 5 days. That felt like 5 weeks. Kiara sensed the tension, becoming clingy and asking repeatedly when she could go back to the park. I filled our time with extended lessons, baking with Maria, board games that made her giggle, normal activities in abnormal circumstances. Nicholas came and went at odd hours, always with Marco or other security, always looking more exhausted. He'd update me briefly, conversations held in low tones after Kiara was asleep. We're making progress. Yamaguchi has agreed to meet neutral territory, talk through terms. What kind of terms? Territory splits, profit sharing on certain operations, guarantees about non-interference in specific businesses. He rubbed his eyes. It's delicate. They want concessions I'm not eager to give, but the alternative is actual violence, and I won't risk that. Not with you and Kiara in my life now. On the 6th day, he came home at a reasonable hour for the first time all week, and the tension in his shoulders had eased. It's done. We reached an agreement. Relief flooded through me. What kind of agreement? The kind where everyone gives up something they'd rather keep, but avoids bloodshed. Yamaguchi gets control of certain operations in Southie that were contentious. I keep primary control of the North End and Beacon Hill. We establish neutral zones where neither organization operates without mutual agreement. He pulled me into his arms. And most importantly, family is explicitly off limits. No targeting loved ones, no using children or partners as leverage. They agreed to that? Once I made it clear that any violation would mean total war, yes. The Yamaguchi patriarch has grandchildren he adores. He understood the terms. So it's really over? This particular conflict, yes. There will be others, there always are. But for now we have peace. He cupped my face. You can go back to your normal life. Well, as normal as life with me gets. That night, Kiara was ecstatic to learn she could return to the park soon, could go places beyond the brownstone's walls. At dinner, she chattered excitedly about everything she wanted to do, and Nicholas watched her with such profound relief that my chest ached. After we put her to bed, he led me back to his study and poured 2 glasses of wine. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. My pulse quickened. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just hear me out. He set down his glass, took both my hands. These past 5 days, watching you take care of Kiara while I dealt with business, coming home to find you both safe, having you in my bed at night, it made me realize something. What? That this arrangement, you living here but maintaining separation, keeping things undefined, it's not what I want anymore. He met my eyes. I want you permanently. Not as Kiara's tutor who happens to be here, not as my girlfriend with her own suite. I want you as my partner, completely integrated into our lives. Nicholas, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet, though God knows I'm thinking about it. I'm just asking you to consider making this real. Moving your things into my room. Being with us not out of security necessity, but because it's where you want to be. Being Kiara's, I don't know what to call it. She loves you. And I love you. I want that to be official. The vulnerability in his eyes, the hope mixed with fear of rejection, made my decision easy. Yes. Yes? Yes to all of it. Moving into your room, being part of your family, making this real. I squeezed his hands. I love you too. Both of you. And I stopped thinking of this as temporary weeks ago. The kiss he gave me was desperate and grateful, and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't deserve you. Probably not, I teased. But you're stuck with me anyway. That night, for the first time, I slept in his bed in his room, surrounded by his things. And when Kiara found us at breakfast the next morning, she simply climbed into my lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Are you staying in Papa's room now? She asked, munching cereal. Is that okay with you? Nicholas asked her carefully. She considered it seriously, then nodded. Miss Taylor belongs here, with us. Right where we can keep her, out of the mouths of children. I hugged her close, catching Nicholas's eye over her head. He mouthed, I love you. And I mouthed it back, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely at home. April brought the kind of spring that made Boston come alive again, trees budding along Mount Vernon Street, and the brownstones garden showing signs of renewal. I'd officially quit my position at Westman Academy, dedicating myself entirely to Kiara and to building this unexpected family. One afternoon, while Kiara practiced scales in the music room, Nicholas found me reading in the library. He closed the door behind him, expression uncharacteristically nervous. I need to take you somewhere, just the 2 of us. Kiara will stay with Maria and Lucia for the afternoon. Where are we going? You'll see. Trust me? An hour later, we were driving through narrow streets in the North End. Marco at the wheel, another security vehicle following at a discreet distance. We pulled up outside a small Italian restaurant I'd never noticed before. The kind of place that looked family-owned and generations old. Inside, an elderly man greeted Nicholas with warmth, speaking rapid Italian and embracing him. Nicholas responded in kind, then turned to me. Taylor, this is Salvatore. He was my father's closest friend. Sal, this is Taylor Wells. Salvatore studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing, then smiled. So this is the woman who has made my godson human again. Come, sit. He led us to a private dining room in the back, away from the few other lunch patrons. The table was already set for 3, wine breathing in a carafe. Sal insisted on meeting you, Nicholas explained as we sat. He's important to me. Like family. More than like, Salvatore corrected, pouring wine. Nicholas has been my nephew in all but blood since his father passed. And when he tells me he's found someone who has brought light back to his life and to little Chiara, I must meet this miracle worker. Over pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it with love, Salvatore told stories about Nicholas's father, about the organization's history, about the delicate balance of power and respect that governed their world. He didn't shy away from the reality of what they did, but he also emphasized the codes they lived by. We are not monsters, he said, refilling my wine glass. We are men who operate in the shadows because the light has failed so many. Protection for businesses the police ignore. Justice for families the courts abandon. It is not legal, but it is necessary. I understand that, I said carefully. Or I'm trying to. She accepts me, Nicholas said quietly. Knows what I am, what I do, and stays anyway. Salvatore nodded approvingly. That is love. Real love, not the fairy tale kind. The kind that sees darkness and chooses light anyway. He looked at me directly. Do you love my nephew, Miss Wells? I do. And you understand that loving him means accepting protection you may not want, danger you didn't choose, complications that will touch every part of your life? I understand. And I'm staying anyway. Good. He raised his glass. Then you have my blessing. For whatever that's worth to you. After lunch, as we walked back to the car, I asked Nicholas, why did you want me to meet him? Because he's the closest thing I have to family besides Lucia. And because I'm going to ask you something important, and I wanted his approval first. Old-fashioned, I know. But it matters to me. My pulse quickened. What are you going to ask me? Instead of answering, he led me to a small park overlooking the harbor. Spring flowers bloomed in careful beds, and the water sparkled in afternoon sun. We sat on a bench, Marco and the security team maintaining careful distance. A year ago, almost to the day, you sang to my daughter in Boston Common and changed everything. Nicholas began. You brought music back into her life. You brought light back into mine. And somewhere along the way, this stopped being about Chiara's therapy and started being about building a family. Nicholas, let me finish. He took my hands, his own trembling slightly. I know we've only been together a short time. I know the circumstances are complicated and unconventional, but I also know that I love you, more than I thought I could love anyone after Alessia, and I know that Chiara loves you, talks about you like you're already her mother. Tears pricked my eyes. She does. She asked me last week if I was going to marry you, said you belong with us forever, not just for now. He pulled a small box from his pocket. So I'm asking, will you marry me, Taylor? Will you be my wife? Chiara's stepmother, part of this strange family we're building together? The ring was beautiful, simple elegance with a single diamond that caught the light. But more beautiful was the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability of a powerful man laying his heart bare. Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring on my finger, and when we kissed, I heard Marco and the other guards applauding from their positions. Nicholas laughed against my lips, then pulled back to look at the ring on my hand. It was Alessia's. She told me before she died that if I ever found someone else, someone who loved Chiara as much as she did, I should give them this ring, that she wanted it to represent continuity, not replacement. The significance of that made my throat tight. I'll treasure it. I know you will. We told Chiara that evening, the 3 of us sitting together in the music room that had become the heart of our family. So Miss Taylor is going to be my new mama? Chiara asked, processing the information with 5-year-old directness. Not instead of your first mama, I clarified quickly. She'll always be your mama, always be part of you. But I'd like to be here too, if that's okay. Another person who loves you. Like how I have Nona's teddy bear, but also the new stuffed bunny you gave me. Both special, just different. The comparison was so perfectly childlike that I had to smile through tears. Exactly like that. Then yes, I want you to be my family for real. She climbed into my lap. Can I be in the wedding? I want to wear a pretty dress and hold flowers. Nicholas laughed, the sound rich with joy. You can absolutely be in the wedding. The most important person there besides Taylor. The next few weeks passed in a blur of wedding planning. We kept it simple, just immediate family and close friends. Lucia insisted on helping with arrangements, dragging me to boutiques to find the perfect dress. I chose something elegant but understated, ivory silk that felt timeless. Rachel, when I told her about the engagement, shrieked so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You're marrying the mob boss? The hot, rich, dangerous mob boss with the adorable daughter? His name is Nicholas, and yes, this is the most dramatic thing that's ever happened to anyone I know. I'm so proud of you. Also terrified for you, but mostly proud. We set the date for June, a small ceremony in the Brownstones' garden with just 30 guests. Chiara practiced her flower girl duties with the seriousness of someone preparing for Carnegie Hall, and watching her prepare filled me with such love I could barely breathe. The night before the wedding, Nicholas found me on the balcony outside our bedroom, looking at the garden where we'd exchange vows tomorrow. Having doubts? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Not even a little. You? Only about whether I deserve you. But I'm selfish enough not to care. He turned me to face him. Thank you for taking a chance on us. On me. I know this life isn't what you imagined. No, I agreed. It's better. Stranger and more complicated, but better. We stood there in the spring night. Music from Chiara's playlist drifting up from the music room where she was having one last practice session. And I thought about the journey from that September afternoon in the park to here. I'd started out as just a music teacher helping a traumatized child. Somewhere along the way, I'd become something more. Partner, mother figure, wife-to-be. The family I'd built with Nicholas and Chiara wasn't conventional, wasn't safe in any traditional sense. But it was ours, and that was more than I'd ever hoped to find. The next morning, as Lucia helped me into my wedding dress, and Chiara danced around in her flower girl outfit, I heard Nicholas's voice downstairs welcoming guests, our strange, complicated family gathering to witness this next chapter. It was perfect. All of it. The music, the people, the life we were choosing together despite the odds. And when I walked down the makeshift aisle in the garden, when I saw Nicholas waiting with Chiara at his side, both looking at me like I was everything they'd hoped for, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the conventional choice, but absolutely, unquestionably, the right one. June arrived with warmth that made the Brownstones' garden perfect for the wedding we'd planned. 3 weeks after our wedding, Nicholas suggested a trip, just the three of us, to Italy. A proper honeymoon, delayed so Chiara could come with us. I want to show you both where Alessia came from, he explained, where my own family originated, the places that made us who we are. We flew into Naples in early September, the heat of summer just beginning to fade. Chiara was beside herself with excitement, pressing her face to the airplane window and chattering in a mix of English and Italian that made Nicholas laugh. The first few days were spent in the city itself, eating food that made even Maria's cooking seem pedestrian, visiting museums and churches that left Chiara awestruck. Nicholas took us to the neighborhood where his grandparents had lived before immigrating to Boston, showing us the narrow streets and old buildings with quiet pride. My father used to tell me stories about playing in these alleys, he said, holding Chiara's hand as we walked. About the community, the way everyone looked out for each other. That's what he tried to recreate in Boston. That sense of family loyalty. On our 4th day, we drove to Caserta, the small town where both my grandmother and Alessia's had been born. The coincidence still felt impossible. 2 women from the same region ending up connected through Nicholas and me. We found the church where Alessia's grandmother had been baptized, the market square where my own grandma had played as a child. Nicholas was quiet as we explored, but I could see emotion working through him. That night, After Chiara fell asleep in our hotel room, Nicholas and I stood on the balcony overlooking the town square, warm Italian air wrapping around us. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for coming here, for letting me share this with you, for honoring Alessia's memory while building our future. She's part of our story," I said simply, "part of what brought us together. I'll never forget that. She would have liked you, would have been grateful that Chiara has you." We stood in comfortable silence, watching lights twinkle across the old town. Tomorrow we'd continue to Rome, then Florence, showing Chiara the art and architecture her mother had loved. But tonight was for reflection, for honoring the past while embracing the future. The final night of our trip, in a small hotel in Naples before our morning flight home, Nicholas had arranged something special. A private performance by a local violinist in the hotel's courtyard, playing the same songs Alessia used to perform. Chiara sat between us, entranced by the music, and when the violinist played the lullaby that had started everything, she reached for my hand. "Mama Alessia's song," she whispered, "and yours now too." The blending of past and present, the way Chiara had learned to hold both her mothers in her heart without conflict, made my chest tight with gratitude. When we returned to Boston in mid-September, 1 year almost to the day from that first meeting in the park, I felt like we'd come full circle. The brownstone welcomed us home, Marco greeting us at the door with his usual professional warmth. "Everything was quiet while you were gone," he reported. "Business as usual." December brought Chiara's 3rd annual winter recital, this one significantly larger than the first. She'd progressed so much in the past year, her confidence transforming her into a genuine performer. We held it at a small concert hall Nicholas had connections with, still controlled and secured, but allowing Chiara to experience a real stage. I watched from backstage as she walked out in her emerald green dress, no longer the silent child from the park, but a vibrant 6-year-old ready to share her music with the world. She played a complex piece we'd worked on for months, her small hands moving across the keys with precision that made me absurdly proud. Nicholas sat in the front row, Lucia beside him, both watching with undisguised emotion. When Chiara finished and took her bow, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, as people congratulated her and she glowed with accomplishment, Nicholas pulled me aside. "You did this. You brought her back to life, gave her this gift. We did this. Together. As a family." That word, family, had come to mean something different than I'd ever expected. Not the traditional structure I'd imagined as a child, but something built from loss and hope and music and love, something forged in complexity and strengthened by choice. Driving home that night, Chiara asleep in the back seat, Nicholas reached for my hand. "Happy?" he asked. I thought about everything that had changed in 15 months. The music teacher who'd helped a crying child had become a wife, a mother, part of a world she'd never imagined entering. I'd found family in the most unlikely place, love in circumstances that should have been impossible. "Yes," I said simply, "incredibly happy." And it was true. This strange, complicated, beautiful life we'd built together. It was exactly what I'd needed without knowing I was searching for it. The story that started with a lullaby in a park had evolved into something far greater, a family rebuilt from pieces, stronger for the breaking. A love that grew in shadows, but bloomed into light. A child who learned that losing her mother didn't mean losing the capacity to love and be loved again. As we pulled up to the brownstone, lights glowing warm through the windows, Marco already opening the door to welcome us home, I realized this was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past, but weaving it into a future that honored both what was lost and what was found. Chiara stirred as Nicholas lifted her from the car, murmuring sleepily about her performance. I followed them inside, this man and child who'd become my everything, and closed the door on the cold December night. Home, family, music, love. It was more than I'd dreamed of that September afternoon when I'd simply wanted to help a lost child. It was everything I hadn't known I was looking for, delivered in the most unexpected package. And standing in the warmth of the brownstone, watching Nicholas carry our daughter upstairs while humming the lullaby that had brought us together, I knew I wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that had led us here.